Hey friends, welcome back. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I came home without telling anyone the exact date. The army processed my retirement quietly. No ceremony, no media, no public statement. When you work missions that never officially happened, you don't get a parade. You get paperwork and a medical file that weighs more than your duffel bag. My name is Elena Vance. I served 21 years in special operations. I retired as a colonel after my last assignment left me with nerve damage in my left leg and a shoulder that will never fully rotate again. I can walk, I can function, I just don't move like I used to. The flight back was uneventful. I wore civilian clothes that didn't fit quite right anymore. I still kept my posture straight. Old habits don't disappear just because the uniform does. I didn't tell my family about the pension. The $3.2 million combat compensation package was authorized after my final deployment. It covered classified risk exposure and permanent physical impairment. The terms were strict: non-disclosure clauses, federal oversight, direct deposit to a secured military financial institution. I signed documents I can't legally describe in detail, but the number was real. $3.2 million, money I never asked for. Money I earned in ways I can't explain at a dinner table. My parents insisted on picking me up from the airport anyway. My father waved like I had just come back from summer camp. My mother hugged me carefully like I might crack. Then there was Cynthia. My younger sister looked like she had stepped out of a skincare commercial. Perfect hair, white blazer, heels sharp enough to qualify as weapons. She hugged me for exactly 2 seconds. "Wow," she said, pulling back. "You smell like the inside of a rental truck." "Good to see you too," I replied. She wrinkled her nose. "You could have at least tried to look normal. People are going to think we rescued you." I looked down at my jacket. It was clean, just worn. I didn't bother defending myself. Cynthia works in marketing. She builds brand identity. Her social media looks like a lifestyle magazine. Clean countertops, soft lighting, inspirational quotes about ambition. I've seen what ambition looks like in the dark. It doesn't use ring lights. At dinner, my mother cooked my favorite meal: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. The house hadn't changed. Same curtains, same family photos. Mine stopped about 5 years ago. Cynthia kept talking. "So what exactly were you doing all these years?" she asked, swirling wine in her glass. "Like specifically?" "Working," I said. She smiled in that tight way she does when she wants more information. "Right. But what kind of work? The kind that doesn't go on LinkedIn?" My father chuckled. Cynthia didn't. She leaned back and crossed her legs. That's when I saw it. A diamond ring, not subtle, not small, the kind that catches light from across the table. It wasn't an engagement ring. It was on her right hand. A statement piece. I know what Cynthia makes. She's good at her job, but she's not buying 5-figure jewelry on salary alone. "That's new," I said. Nodding toward her hand, she lifted it casually. "Oh, this. Just a little gift to myself." I closed a big campaign. "Must have been huge," I said. She held my gaze for a second too long. Dinner moved on. Small talk, neighbors, real estate prices. My mother asked if I planned to settle down now. My father asked if I would consider consulting for defense contractors. Cynthia watched me carefully. Halfway through dessert, she changed her tone. "Have you been sleeping okay?" she asked. "I sleep. That's not what I asked." I set my fork down. "I'm fine." She tilted her head, concern painted perfectly across her face. "You don't seem fine." My parents went quiet. "I read a lot about post-combat trauma," Cynthia continued. "PTSD can show up in subtle ways: irritability, emotional detachment, avoidance." "I'm not avoiding anything," I said calmly. She reached across the table and touched my mother's arm. "Mom, you saw how she reacted at Thanksgiving 3 years ago. She barely spoke." "That was before deployment," I said. Cynthia kept going. "These cases can get worse after retirement: loss of structure, loss of identity." My father cleared his throat. "Elena, sweetheart, are you getting support?" "I've completed my evaluations," I said. "I'm medically cleared." Cynthia smiled softly. "Cleared by who?" "The same system that sends people back into combat broken." There it was. She wasn't worried. She was building a narrative. I've spent my career reading rooms under pressure. Interrogation environments, hostile briefings, negotiations where one wrong word costs lives. This felt familiar. She wanted my parents to doubt me. Military benefits can be complicated, she added lightly. Paperwork, financial planning, legal stuff. I can handle paperwork, I said. She laughed gently. You've been in the field for decades. Let someone who understands civilian systems help you. I understand civilian systems. Do you? She asked, voice still sweet. Because you just said LinkedIn like it's a classified server. My mother looked uneasy. Cynthia's just trying to help. Help with what I asked. With everything, Cynthia said smoothly. Medical coordination, financial management, making sure you don't make decisions while you're adjusting. I felt the shift. They weren't discussing if I needed help. They were discussing who would manage me. I don't need a manager, I said evenly. No one's saying that, Cynthia replied quickly. Just temporary oversight, until you're stable. I am stable. She sighed like I had proven her point. I just don't want you overwhelmed, she said. Combat pensions can be substantial. People make mistakes. There it was again. Pensions. She said it casually. Testing. I kept my face neutral. I'll manage my own finances, I said. My father rubbed his forehead. We just want what's best. I know, I said. Cynthia reached for her wine again, diamond flashing under the light. You've always been the strong one, she said softly. Let someone else carry things for once. It sounded generous. It wasn't. I didn't argue further. Not at that table. I watched. I listened. I catalogued tone, posture, eye contact. Cynthia didn't ask how my leg felt. She didn't ask about pain management. She didn't ask what I needed. She asked about control. When dinner ended, she offered to help me organize my documents the next day. I've taken a course in financial planning, she added. It would ease Mom and Dad's mind. I'll think about it, I said. Upstairs in my old bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the ceiling. I replayed the conversation like a debrief. Her pacing, her timing, the way she introduced the idea of instability before mentioning benefits. That ring caught the hallway light again when she walked past my open door. I checked my phone, secure messages, notifications from my military financial institution confirming the first structured deposit schedule. The number didn't scare me, but the interest in it did. Have you ever walked into your own family home and realized someone was already calculating your worth before you even unpacked your bag? Tell me in the comments, have you ever been the strongest person in the room and still treated like you needed supervision? I agreed to the therapy session because I needed my leg to cooperate, not because I needed supervision. The VA clinic scheduled me for an intensive outpatient treatment to manage nerve damage and inflammation. It wasn't dramatic, no surgery, just injections, monitored medication, and a few hours under mild sedation to reset pain receptors. Cynthia offered to drive me. I'll handle the paperwork, she said brightly. You just focus on healing. I should have driven myself. The clinic was clean and efficient. The nurse verified my identity twice. I signed consent forms I actually read. I remember the fluorescent lights. I remember the cold table under my back. I remember thinking I hated depending on anyone for a ride. The medication hit gradually. Not unconscious, just heavy. My body felt like it was wrapped in wet sand. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the clinic. I was in my parents' living room, blanket over me, lights dimmed. My head felt thick. My leg throbbed in a distant, manageable way. Cynthia sat beside me with a stack of papers on a clipboard. Hey, she said softly, you're home. Everything went great. I tried to sit up. My arm didn't cooperate at first. Easy, she said. The doctor said you'd be groggy. My mother hovered behind her. My father stood near the kitchen doorway. What time is it? I asked. Late afternoon, Cynthia answered quickly. We didn't want to leave you alone at the clinic. It's better here. That was my first internal red flag. The VA doesn't release sedated patients without clear discharge documentation and confirmation of a responsible adult. I didn't remember signing anything at discharge. Cynthia flipped through the clipboard. There are just a couple follow-up forms, she said. Standard medical coordination stuff. We figured we'd knock it out while you're resting. I reached for the pen automatically. Habit, finish the task. What is it? I asked. Authorization for care management, she replied smoothly. So I can talk to your providers. Insurance things. It's complicated. I scanned the top page. The words blurred slightly, but I saw key phrases, durable power, financial authority, full discretion. I blinked harder. That's not medical, I said slowly. It is connected to medical. Cynthia corrected gently. Your benefits tie into your care. It's all bundled. My father stepped forward. Honey, it's just temporary. You've been through a lot. I focused on the page again. Durable power of attorney. My name printed neatly. Cynthia's name listed as agent. Why is this here? I asked. It's just in case, she said. You don't want to deal with federal paperwork while you're recovering. I tried to push myself upright again. My muscles resisted. I can deal with paperwork, I said. You're barely keeping your eyes open, she replied calmly. That's exactly the point. She placed the pen in my hand. My grip felt clumsy. My mother crouched beside the couch. Sweetheart, let your sister help. It's not forever. I should have stopped. I should have insisted on reading every page. Instead, I told myself I would review it later, that nothing binding could happen without formal notarization. I signed. 3 places. Cynthia turned pages efficiently, tabs already marked, lines highlighted. Just initial here, she said, and here. My signature looked slightly uneven, not sloppy, just tired. She gathered the papers quickly once I finished. Good, she said with a smile. Now you rest. The next time I woke up, it was dark. My head was clear. My body hurt, but in a familiar way. I reached for my phone on the side table. Face ID failed. I tried the passcode. Incorrect. I tried again. Incorrect. That wasn't possible. I've used the same secure alphanumeric structure for years. Muscle memory. I sat up fully this time. My pulse didn't spike. It narrowed. I walked carefully downstairs. Cynthia was at the dining table with her laptop open. Did you change my phone settings? I asked. She looked up slowly. Oh, yeah. You were having trouble earlier. I reset it to simplify access. You reset my phone. I streamlined it, she corrected. You don't need all that encryption stuff anymore. I held out my hand. Give me the new code. She hesitated half a second too long. It's just a temporary admin setup, she said. For safety. For whose safety? For yours, she replied. My father stepped in. Don't start. I'm not starting, I said evenly. I'm asking for my phone access. My mother crossed her arms. Cynthia's just trying to protect you. From what? From yourself, she said quietly. There it was. Not concern. Authority. Show me the documents I signed, I said. Cynthia closed her laptop halfway. You don't need to stress yourself. I want to see them. You weren't fully lucid, my father said firmly. That's exactly why we stepped in. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger yet. Just clarity. What did I sign? I asked again. A management authorization, Cynthia answered. It allows me to oversee your financial and medical decisions temporarily. For how long? Until you're stable. I am stable. She gave me a look like I had just proven her argument. Do you even remember what you signed? She asked gently. Yes, I said. Durable power of attorney. My mother looked startled. Cynthia recovered quickly. It's standard language. You're overreacting. Give me copies. They're being processed, she replied. Processed where? With our attorney. Our attorney. For the family, she said. This affects all of us. That sentence landed differently. Affects all of us. My pension doesn't affect all of you, I said calmly. My father's jaw tightened. That's exactly the problem. You think you operate independently. I do operate independently. You've always thought that, he shot back. But you're home now. You're not in charge of a unit anymore. I looked at Cynthia. Her diamond ring flashed again under the dining room light. You moved fast, I said quietly. She smiled. Opportunities don't wait, she replied. I walked back upstairs without another word. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and forced myself to replay every detail from the afternoon. Sedation level, paper headings, signature count. My phone reset, timing. If the power of attorney was filed immediately, it could activate within 48 hours, which meant direct access to everything. I opened my laptop. At least that password hadn't changed. Yet, I realized something cold and precise. They didn't see me as unstable. They saw me as liquidity, an asset with a release date, a structured payout schedule, a number they believed needed management. And I had just handed them administrative access while groggy and surrounded. I flexed my left hand slowly. The grip strength was still there. So was my memory. They thought I had come home damaged. They forgot I spent 2 decades detecting manipulation before it turned lethal. This wasn't about protection. It was about control. And I had just given them a legal lever. I waited until the house was empty before I made my move. Cynthia had a client brunch. My parents went to church even though it wasn't Sunday. I didn't ask questions. I just watched the driveway clear. I didn't use my laptop at home. If someone had legal authority under a power of attorney, they could justify access for my benefit. I wasn't going to test how far that logic stretched. Instead, I drove to the public library across town. I wore a baseball cap and a plain hoodie, not because I thought anyone was tracking me, because routine matters. You don't conduct sensitive checks from predictable locations. The library was quiet, a few college kids, an older man reading newspapers, no one paying attention to me. I signed in for a guest computer. I didn't access my account directly at first. I opened a secure browser, then I used the layered authentication protocol tied to my military financial institution. Username, password, secondary key phrase, security token from my backup device. The login screen paused longer than usual. Then it opened. My balance displayed in clean neutral numbers. Available funds $12,417.83. I stared at it. That wasn't possible. I navigated to transaction history. The first structured deposit from the combat compensation package had cleared. $3,200,000 time-stamped. 48 hours later, a transfer. $3,187,582.17 withdrawn. Destination external linked account. Authorized by power of attorney. I didn't blink. I didn't curse. I didn't slam the keyboard. I scrolled. The authorization documentation was attached digitally. The same power of attorney form I signed under sedation. Digitally notarized the next morning. Filed immediately. Efficient. Very efficient. I checked the receiving account metadata. Private business account. Registered owner, Cynthia Vance, Consulting, LLC. I leaned back slowly. She hadn't even tried to hide it. There were additional transactions already in motion. Wire transfers, retainer fees, event deposits, luxury office lease agreement. I closed the screen for a second and forced my breathing to stay steady. Anger wastes oxygen. Clarity preserves it. I reopened the page and downloaded every record available. Email confirmations, authorization logs, IP addresses used during the transfer process. The initiating device came from my parents' home network. Of course it did. I logged out carefully and cleared the browser session. Then I opened social media. Cynthia's profile was public. She curated it that way. Her newest post was from 12 hours earlier, a photo of her standing in front of a glass-walled office suite. Downtown skyline behind her. Caption, big things happening. Grateful for growth and fearless decisions. I checked the location tag. The most expensive commercial building in the city. Swipe. Another photo, a render mock-up for an event banner. Entrepreneur of the Year Gala. Honoring Cynthia Vance. Venue listed at the bottom. The Grand Regent Hotel. I know that hotel. It hosts political fundraisers and corporate conventions. Ballrooms that cost more per night than most people make in a month. The deposit listed on her business account matched the Grand Regent's standard event reservation fee. Paid in full, from my pension. There were more posts in her story highlights. Champagne glasses, catering tastings, a designer consultation. She was building a celebration with military compensation funds that came from classified operations she couldn't even pronounce correctly. I didn't feel betrayal the way movies show it. No shaking hands, no tears. What I felt was confirmation. Everything she said at dinner. Every soft concern, every mention of instability. It had been positioning. She needed me legally diminished long enough to move the money, and she moved fast. I checked the transfer timestamps again. 48 hours. That's how long it took my family to liquidate 21 years of service. I logged out of social media and closed the browser. Then I sat still. This is the part where most people confront. They storm home. They demand answers. They accuse. That gives the other side time to adjust strategy. I didn't confront. I didn't call. I didn't text. Instead, I walked outside the library and sat on a bench. I took out my secondary phone, the one my family didn't know about, the one still linked to my old unit's emergency contact channel. Technically, I was retired. Operationally, certain lines never fully close. I dialed a secure routing number. It rang once. A voice answered without introduction. Identify, Vance, I said. Colonel, retired. Pause. State purpose. I didn't explain the pension. I didn't mention my sister. I didn't sound emotional. I gave one code. A mission identifier from my last deployment. Silence on the other end changed tone. That channel is restricted, the voice said carefully. I'm aware. Another pause. Stand by. The line went quiet for 10 seconds. Then a different voice came on. Lower, controlled. Colonel Vance. Yes, sir, you're not active. I know, you're using a legacy code. Yes, sir. What do you need? I kept it simple. Unauthorized financial movement connected to combat compensation. Power of attorney executed under questionable capacity. Silence again. Amount, he asked. 3.2 million, that landed. Do you have documentation? Yes, sir. Were classified funds compromised? No, sir. Personal compensation package. Another pause. Send nothing electronically yet, he said. We'll verify on our end. Yes, sir. Understood that invoking that code triggers review. I do. Then we'll review. The line disconnected. No promises, no comfort, just process. That's all I needed. I put the phone away. I didn't feel rescued. I felt aligned. When I drove home, Cynthia's car was already in the driveway. Through the living room window, I could see her laughing, phone in hand, probably confirming floral arrangements or lighting design. My parents sat beside her, nodding along. They looked proud of momentum, proud of visibility, proud of growth funded by money they believed now belonged to the family. I stepped inside quietly. Cynthia looked up first. You are out, she asked casually. Needed fresh air, I replied. She smiled. You should get used to being home. Stability is good for you. I nodded once. Is the gala black tie? I asked. Her eyes lit up. Of course, you should come. It'll be good for your image. My image, I repeated. She laughed. You know what I mean. Yes, I did. I went upstairs without another word. 48 hours, $3.2 million, a ballroom reservation, and a diamond ring that suddenly made perfect sense. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't raise my voice. I let her plan her celebration, because the only thing more dangerous than a thief with momentum is a thief who thinks she already won. I decided to verify everything before I reacted to anything. If Cynthia moved that fast on the pension, there was no reason to assume she stopped there. 2 mornings later, I drove to the county probate office. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just said I had a medical follow-up. The probate clerk was efficient. I gave my grandfather's full legal name and date of death. She pulled up the file within minutes. My grandfather left a modest estate, some savings, personal items, and a small house in the suburbs about 30 minutes from downtown. That house mattered to me. It wasn't large. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a backyard with a stubborn oak tree that never quite grew straight. I used to mow that lawn during summers when I was 15. After my last deployment, when retirement started feeling real, I pictured that house. Quiet, no media, no briefings, just a place where nobody needed anything from me. The clerk handed me a copy of the amended will, amended. I scanned the document, date of modification 3 weeks ago. Beneficiary changes, primary residential asset transferred entirely to Cynthia Vance. My name appeared once, as having voluntarily relinquished interest. Attached was a signed acknowledgement. With my signature, I studied it closely. It looked accurate at first glance. Same structure, same angle on the E. But the pressure pattern was wrong. When I sign under normal conditions, the tail of my last name presses slightly heavier. Here it was too uniform, too practiced. Was this notarized? I asked. Yes, the clerk replied. Standard procedure. I checked the notary's name, different from the one on the power of attorney. That meant coordination, separate appointments, separate steps. Intentional. When was this filed? I asked. 2 days after the amendment was signed, which meant she moved on the will immediately after securing control of my pension. Efficient. Again. I paid for certified copies and walked out without saying anything else. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and read the amendment line by line. The justification section stated I had expressed disinterest in real property due to long-term relocation and medical uncertainty. Medical uncertainty. That narrative again. I drove to the suburban house before going home. The grass was trimmed, new lock on the front door, a contractor truck parked outside. I stayed in my car and watched for 10 minutes. 2 men carried in boxes labeled vanity fixtures and lighting install. Of course. When I got back home, Cynthia was on the phone in the kitchen. We'll flip it within a year, she was saying. It's undervalued. I already have a designer lined up. She saw me and ended the call quickly. You were out again, she said. I visited Grandpa's house. Her expression didn't change. Oh, she said lightly, isn't it cute? It was left to both of us, she shrugged. You signed it over. No, I didn't. She walked to the counter and leaned against it. Elena, you've been gone for years. You don't even live here. That doesn't invalidate inheritance. You said you didn't want property tying you down. I never said that. She gave me a patient look. You don't remember everything clearly. There it was again. Memory instability. My father walked in mid-conversation. What's going on? He asked. Elena's confused about the will, Cynthia answered calmly. I'm not confused, I said. My signature was forged. My mother stiffened. Don't accuse your sister of something like that. I'm stating a fact. Cynthia folded her arms. You signed. It was witnessed. Under what condition? You were perfectly fine. I was under active treatment and sedation that week. She smiled slightly. You can't keep blaming medication. That sentence told me something important. They had rehearsed this. My father's tone hardened. This house is an opportunity for Cynthia. She has vision. You don't need it. I earned my share, I said. You've earned plenty, he shot back. Meaning the pension. Meaning they believed the $3.2 million balanced any other claim I had. Cynthia stepped forward. Let's be practical, she said. You don't even know how to renovate property. I do. I know how to read contracts, I replied, clearly not well enough. The room went quiet. That's when my mother said it. We need your room. I blinked once. What? Cynthia's converting it into a glam studio, she said. For brand shoots. The basement storage area will be more private for you. The storage room, I asked. It's temporary, she replied. You should understand sacrifice. Sacrifice. That word almost made me laugh. You want me in the basement, I said evenly. It's just space management, Cynthia added. You're not exactly hosting dinner parties. My father nodded. It's the least you can do for the family after everything we've done. Everything they've done. I looked at Cynthia's ring again. The new office, the gala, the suburban house renovation, all funded within 72 hours of gaining control over my finances. And now they wanted my bedroom, framed as generosity, framed as unity, framed as moral responsibility. Fine, I said. Cynthia looked surprised. You'll move, she asked. Yes. My mother exhaled with relief. They mistook compliance for weakness. The basement storage room was small, one window near the ceiling, boxes stacked along 2 walls. I cleared space myself, set up a cot, placed my duffel bag in the corner. That night I didn't sleep immediately. Instead, I began rebuilding routine, morning mobility drills, slow leg strengthening exercises, grip training, isometric holds. Nothing dramatic, just consistency. Pain is easier to manage when it has structure. While they redecorated upstairs, I observed. Sound travels in houses like ours. Hardwood floors carry vibration. Voices bounce down stairwells. I positioned an old digital recorder near the vent connected to the living room. Legal in my state if I'm a party to the household environment. I didn't need theatrics. I needed documentation. Over the next week, I recorded everything. Cynthia discussing investment schemes. It's high yield, crypto-backed commercial lending. We'll double it. The gala exposure alone will bring sponsors. Once the house flips, I'll leverage equity. She wasn't preserving funds. She was gambling them. My pension was liquidity to her, seed capital, image fuel, brand amplification. One night she laughed loudly upstairs. By the time she figures it out, she said it won't matter. My mother's voice answered softly. Just make sure it looks legal. I replayed that line 3 times. Make sure it looks legal. That was the family doctrine now. Appearance over integrity, optics over truth. Upstairs they talked about morality, about helping me adjust, about unity. Downstairs I built a timeline, transfer dates, will amendment, business registrations, vendor deposits. Every move aligned to the same 48-hour window. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had been replaced with assessment. They believed I was a retired liability, an outdated asset, a funding source with limited awareness. They forgot something simple. I spent my career studying adversaries who thought they were smarter than they were, and I had just started gathering evidence. I was finishing my morning leg drills when my secondary phone vibrated once. Unknown number, not blocked, not labeled. I let it ring twice before answering. Vance. A calm male voice responded. Colonel Vance, this is Daniel Harper, former JAG Corps. We've crossed paths. I recognized the name immediately. Major Daniel Harper had handled legal reviews for operational funding during my last deployment. Quiet, precise. Not someone who called casually. I remember I said. I won't take much of your time, he continued. Your inquiry triggered a financial compliance review. And something else surfaced. I stayed silent. An external private investigator filed a preliminary petition with county court last week, he said. The petition references concerns about your mental competency. My grip tightened around the phone. Filed by who, I asked. Cynthia Vance, he replied. No hesitation. On what grounds? Claimed instability. Alleged impaired decision-making post-combat. Attached statements from family members. Of course, my parents. Objective, I asked. To establish legal guardianship if necessary, he said, which would formalize her control over all financial and personal decisions. That was the next step. If power of attorney could be challenged, guardianship would lock it in. She hired a private investigator, Harper continued. The investigator was contracted to gather footage and behavioral documentation supporting incompetence. Following me, I asked, yes, how long? 10 days. I calculated backward. That started before the pension transfer. She was building the case while moving the money. Do you have documentation? I asked. I have copies of the petition and communication between the investigator and her consulting firm, Harper said. The investigator grew uncomfortable and flagged irregularities when federal funds appeared involved. So someone in that chain still had standards. Why are you calling me directly? I asked. Because if guardianship proceeds under false medical claims, it could intersect with your classified medical file. That complicates things. I understood. If she forced a competency hearing, portions of my sealed record might be dragged into civilian court. She wasn't just stealing money, she was aiming to legally reduce me. I'll send physical copies to a secure address, Harper said. Do not discuss this over unsecured lines. Understood. And Colonel, yes. Be careful how you respond. If she's building an instability narrative, visible confrontation helps her. I won't confront, I said. Good. The line disconnected. I sat on the basement cot for a long moment. Private investigator, guardianship petition, competency challenge. She wasn't improvising. She was executing a phased plan. Financial control first, legal consolidation second. Public image reinforcement third. The gala fit perfectly into that final phase. I checked the basement window. Across the street, a dark sedan sat parked. Engine off, driver inside. I hadn't noticed it before. Maybe it had been there, maybe it hadn't. I didn't react. Instead, I grabbed my old uniform case from under the cot. I hadn't opened it since retirement. The fabric still smelled like starch and field detergent. Clean, maintained. My combat jacket wasn't decorative. It carried weight. Patches I couldn't explain publicly, ribbons most civilians wouldn't recognize. Proof of competence no private investigator could erase. I carried it upstairs. Cynthia was in the living room reviewing seating charts. She looked up and froze when she saw the uniform in my hands. What are you doing with that? She asked sharply. Checking it, I replied. For what? For the gala. Her face changed instantly. You're not wearing that, she said. Why not? Because it's dramatic and embarrassing. It's my record. It's not the brand, she snapped. I unfolded the jacket slowly, inspecting a seam. You've built a narrative, I said calmly. Wouldn't it be inspiring to have a decorated veteran at your event? Her jaw tightened. You are not turning my gala into a trauma showcase. It's a black tie event, I said. This qualifies. She stood up abruptly. You think this is funny? She demanded. I think it's interesting. You don't even understand optics, she said. You walk in there like that and people start asking questions. About what? About why you're not normal. There it was again. Normal, I met her eyes. You hired someone to follow me, I said evenly. Her expression flickered. Just for a second. I don't know what you're talking about. Guardianship petition, I added. Silence. My parents entered from the kitchen, sensing tension. What's going on? My mother asked. Elena's making accusations again, Cynthia replied quickly. I'm stating facts, I said. Cynthia stepped closer to me. You're unstable, she said under her breath. You see enemies everywhere. I see patterns, I replied. You see conspiracies. You hired a private investigator. You need supervision, she snapped. I didn't raise my voice. You're afraid, I said quietly. That did it. Her hand moved before my brain finished processing it. The slap landed across my face sharp and fast. My head turned slightly from the impact, but I didn't lose balance. You are a cripple, she shouted. Do you hear me? A broken soldier. Nobody wants. If it weren't for me, you'd be rotting somewhere forgotten." The room went silent. My father stared at the floor. My mother gasped, but didn't step between us. I turned my head back slowly and looked at her. She was shaking, not from strength, from exposure. I tasted blood where my lips split slightly. I didn't wipe it immediately. Instead, I did something she didn't expect. I smiled. Not wide, just enough. "Enjoy your party," I said calmly. "It's going to cost you more than you think." Her eyes narrowed. "What does that mean, you'll find out?" I folded the uniform carefully and walked past her toward the stairs. She didn't follow. That night, the dark sedan across the street was gone. In its place sat a different vehicle. Different color, different driver. The investigator might still be working, or someone else might be watching now. Either way, the phase she designed was nearing completion. She believed public celebration would seal her image. She believed documentation and narrative would make everything legal enough. Upstairs, she rehearsed her acceptance speech. Downstairs, I reviewed the certified copies Harper had delivered to a secure P.O. box that afternoon. Email chains, payment confirmations to the investigator, draft language for competency claims. My sister had put everything in writing. Ambition makes people careless. I placed the documents beside the audio recordings and the financial logs. The file was growing, and for the first time since I came home, I wasn't just reacting, I was waiting. Because the gala wasn't her victory lap. It was a timeline marker. I mailed the certified packet before sunrise. Copies of the power of attorney, the transfer logs, the probate amendment, the audio transcripts, the guardianship draft petition, every document organized, indexed, and cross-referenced. I didn't send it to a random agency. I sent it to the military department's Financial Integrity and Counter-Fraud Division, the office that audits misuse of defense-related compensation funds. When combat compensation is involved, jurisdiction shifts fast. I didn't accuse my sister emotionally. I filed a misuse report. Improper execution of power of attorney under questionable capacity. Rapid liquidation of federally regulated compensation. Potential fraud exposure tied to national defense funds. That language matters. Within 24 hours, I received confirmation of receipt. Within 48, I received a call. Colonel Vance, the woman on the line, said, "This is Special Review Officer Karen Doyle." "Yes, ma'am. We've validated irregular activity. Your compensation package falls under restricted oversight due to its classification tier." "I understand." "The power of attorney was executed legally on its face," she continued. "However, the context raises concerns. That's why I reported it." "We are initiating an asset preservation protocol," she said, effective immediately. I knew what that meant. Asset preservation doesn't announce itself. It tightens quietly. "Will I be notified of each step?" I asked. "You will be notified if necessary," she replied. "For now, do not interfere. Let process work." "I won't interfere," I said. That afternoon, Cynthia left the house in a tailored cream suit, phone glued to her ear. She looked energized. Momentum suits her. She drove to a luxury boutique downtown for her final gala fitting. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. 2 hours later, my father's voice echoed down the basement stairs. "Elena," he called. I walked up slowly. Cynthia stood in the kitchen, face flushed, red phone in hand. "What did you do?" she demanded. "I made a report," I replied calmly. "To who? Appropriate channels." "My card was declined," she snapped. "That happens." "At Bellucci Couture," she continued. In front of staff, my mother stepped in. "It's probably a fraud alert." "Yes," I said. "It might be." Cynthia paced across the tile floor. "They said the account is under review," she said. "National level review." I didn't react. She dialed someone else. "I need this cleared immediately," she said into the phone. "It's a mistake." Pause. "No, that's impossible." Another pause. "What do you mean, restricted funds?" She glanced at me mid-call. I held her gaze without expression. "I don't care what flag it triggered," she hissed into the phone. "Fix it." She hung up abruptly. "This is a system error," she said loudly, as if convincing herself. "It could be," I replied. She stepped closer. "You filed something. Yes, you're trying to sabotage my business. I'm protecting mine." "It was legal," she insisted. "You signed. I signed under sedation. You were coherent. That will be evaluated." My father slammed his hand on the counter. "Enough. You're hurting your own sister." I looked at him evenly. She liquidated $3.2 million in 48 hours. "It was strategic investment," Cynthia cut in. In crypto-backed lending and event decor, I asked. Her jaw tightened. This is harassment, she said. You're abusing military contacts. I reported misuse of compensation funds. They're mine, she snapped. They were never yours. Her phone buzzed again. She answered immediately. Yes, silence on her end for a full 10 seconds. What do you mean frozen? Another pause. All accounts. Her voice cracked slightly. No, that can't be right. She ended the call slowly. My mother stepped forward. What happened? Cynthia looked at me like I had set her car on fire. They've restricted my business accounts, she said. Pending investigation. For how long, my father asked. They didn't say. I kept my voice steady. When restricted defense-related funds are involved, financial institutions are required to cooperate. You reported me for national fraud, she shouted. I reported unauthorized execution of compensation. It's the same thing. No, I said, it's not. Her breathing grew sharp. I have contracts, she said. Deposits, vendors. You moved very quickly, I replied. You think this is funny, I think it's predictable. She grabbed her car keys again. I'm going back, she said. They can't hold my gown. 30 minutes later, she called my mother from the boutique. I could hear her through speakerphone. They won't release it, she said frantically. They're citing financial compliance review. What does that mean, my mother asked. They said the payment source is under investigation for possible national-level financial irregularities. The words sounded heavier when repeated aloud. They're asking me to leave the dress, Cynthia continued. They removed it from my fitting room. Calm down, my father said. I am calm, she snapped. It's a system glitch. She looked at me when she walked back into the house. Tell them to fix it, she demanded. I don't control them, I said. You started it. I documented it. You're ruining everything. I tilted my head slightly. You built everything on money you didn't earn. She took a step forward. You would have wasted it, she said, letting it sit. It wasn't meant to move like that. It was capital, she insisted. Opportunity, it was compensation for classified risk. It was sitting idle. It was protected. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. You think your service makes you untouchable? I said. I think it makes documentation thorough. Her phone rang again. This time she didn't put it on speaker. Yes, silence. Yes, I understand. Pause. No, I was not aware. Longer pause. When? Her shoulders dropped slightly. The gala deposit, she asked quietly. Another pause. They're reviewing that too. She ended the call without another word. The hotel flagged the payment, she said flatly. For what, my father asked. For potential misuse of federally restricted funds. The phrase hung in the air. She looked at me like she finally saw the full structure. You went nuclear, she whispered. No, I replied calmly. I followed protocol. She sank into a chair. This will blow over, she muttered. It has to. Reviews take time, I said. How much time? Depends on findings. The house felt smaller suddenly. Upstairs, decorative boxes for the gala still lined the hallway. Downstairs, my evidence file was complete. Within 72 hours, the dominoes had begun falling. Credit restrictions, account freezes, vendor alerts, compliance flags. I didn't celebrate. I didn't taunt. I observed. Because when financial systems move at a national level, they don't move emotionally. They move conclusively. And this was only the beginning. I pressed the last crease out of my combat jacket before leaving the basement. The fabric sat perfectly on my shoulders, clean, structured, precise. The same way I wore it on formal inspections overseas. Upstairs, the house was buzzing. Hair appointments, makeup artists, delivery confirmations. Cynthia had managed to keep the gala alive despite the financial restrictions. She shifted vendors, leveraged short-term credit, probably promised future sponsorship coverage. She adapts fast. When I stepped into the hallway in full uniform, the noise stopped. My mother stared at me first. You're not wearing that, she said immediately. I am, I replied. It's not appropriate, she insisted. It's formal military dress, I said. Black tie standard. Cynthia walked out of her room in a fitted gold gown. She looked polished, controlled. Then she saw me. Her expression hardened instantly. You're not turning my event into a spectacle, she said. I'm attending, I replied calmly. You weren't invited. It's a public gala. Tickets were listed. My father stepped forward. Don't embarrass us. I won't, I said. Cynthia walked closer, lowering her voice. If you walk in there dressed like that, people will ask questions. About my service, I asked. About your condition, she snapped. I don't have a condition. She looked at my leg briefly. You limp. I function. You're unstable, she whispered. And if you create a scene, I will finish the guardianship filing tomorrow. There it was. Not a threat, a promise. I'll behave, I said. She studied my face, trying to read intent. She saw none. At the Grand Regent Hotel, the ballroom was already full. Crystal chandeliers, live string quartet, media banners near the entrance, a step-and-repeat wall with Cynthia's logo printed in gold. Entrepreneur of the Year, sponsors lined the walls, real estate investors, startup founders, local politicians, influencers holding champagne flutes like accessories. I walked in alone. Conversations paused. Uniforms do that. A few guests glanced at my ribbons. Some nodded politely. Others looked confused. Cynthia was near the stage laughing with a group of donors. When she noticed me, her smile froze for half a second before she recovered. She excused herself and approached. What are you doing? She asked under her breath. Attending. You look aggressive. It's a standard uniform. You're making people uncomfortable. I'm standing. She turned toward a nearby group of guests and forced a bright smile. Everyone, she said loudly, drawing attention. I want you to meet my sister. A few guests turned fully toward us. This is Elena, Cynthia continued. She just retired. I nodded politely. From the military, she added. A man in a tuxedo extended his hand. Thank you for your service. I shook it firmly. Cynthia laughed lightly. She's adjusting, she said. The man hesitated. Adjusting, he repeated. Cynthia placed a hand on my shoulder like I was a fragile display item. Combat can be rough, she said. She's had some challenges. I removed her hand calmly. I completed my evaluations, I said evenly. Cynthia's smile tightened. She doesn't always realize how she comes across. She continued addressing the group instead of me. PTSD is complicated. The word landed intentionally. I felt several eyes shift subtly. She's been struggling, Cynthia added softly. But we're supporting her. A woman near the bar leaned toward her companion. Oh, she whispered, not quietly enough. Cynthia leaned closer to the group. She gets territorial, she said lightly. Sometimes she thinks we're stealing from her. Laughter. Nervous, polite. I kept my posture straight. Look at her, Cynthia said, raising her voice just enough. My mentally unstable sister who thinks success is a conspiracy. The words were sharp, deliberate. Guests glanced between us. She doesn't like that I built something on my own, Cynthia continued. She wants the family stuck in the past. I built plenty, I said calmly. She smiled coldly. See delusions. A few people shifted uncomfortably. My father approached quickly. Elena, he said quietly. This isn't the place. I'm standing, I replied. You're making a scene, my mother added, appearing at his side. I haven't raised my voice. Cynthia laughed again, louder this time. She thinks wearing that uniform makes her untouchable, she told a nearby investor. The investor avoided eye contact. I noticed subtle changes in the room. Some guests stepped back. Others whispered. The narrative was working. My father's tone changed. Go home, he said firmly. I bought a ticket. You're embarrassing your sister. She's embarrassing herself, I replied. My mother stepped forward. You don't understand image, she said sharply. Cynthia has worked too hard for this. With my money, I said quietly. Several heads turned at that. Cynthia's eyes flashed. There it is, she snapped. The paranoia. I met her gaze. It's documented, I said. She laughed again, but the edge was thinner now. You hear that, she said to the group. She thinks I stole from her. No one laughed this time. My father lost patience. You are not welcome here, he said loudly enough for people nearby to hear. The string quartet faltered slightly before continuing. You've always been difficult, my mother added. Always self-righteous. Cynthia stepped beside them, positioning herself center stage. She can't stand that I succeeded, she said dramatically. She wants to drag us down because she couldn't adapt to civilian life. I let the silence sit. You're not stable, my father said clearly. And we won't let you sabotage this. Several guests were openly watching now. My mother pointed toward the exit. Leave, she said. For once in your life, stop making everything about you. I felt something shift internally. Not anger, not humiliation, just confirmation. My own parents in a ballroom, funded by my combat compensation, publicly labeling me unstable to protect their preferred daughter's image. Go! my father repeated louder now. Before you ruin her reputation. Ruin. As if truth were vandalism. Cynthia lifted her chin. Security she called lightly as if it were a joke. 2 hotel staff members looked unsure but began moving in our direction. I didn't move. I stood still in full uniform while my family disowned me under chandeliers financed by my service. This is why she needed supervision, Cynthia told a donor nearby. She can't regulate herself. The humiliation peaked right there, not because of what she said, but because of how easily they said it. As if I were a defective product returned to sender. My father's voice cut through again. You are no longer part of this family if you can't support your sister. Clear, public, final. The room felt heavier. Some guests looked uncomfortable. Others avoided eye contact entirely. Cynthia turned toward the stage, smoothing her gown as if nothing had happened. The MC tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, let's begin. I remained standing near the center aisle, not shouting, not arguing, just present, because humiliation only works when the target believes it. And I didn't. I stayed where I was as the MC handed Cynthia the microphone. She stepped onto the stage like nothing had just happened. Spotlights hit her perfectly. Cameras lifted. Applause rolled across the ballroom. She smiled like a woman who believed momentum was permanent. Tonight she began is about vision, courage, and building something from nothing. I almost laughed at that. From nothing. She lifted a champagne glass from the podium. My family taught me resilience, she continued smoothly. They taught me to overcome obstacles. Her eyes flicked toward me briefly, subtle, controlled, even when those obstacles are close to home. A few guests chuckled. My parents sat near the front table, nodding proudly. Cynthia raised her glass higher. To success. Before she could take a sip, the ballroom doors opened. Not gently, not dramatically, just decisively. The sound of heavy boots striking marble echoed across the room. Conversations died mid-sentence. 6 uniformed military police officers entered first. Formal dress blues, armed, controlled posture. Behind them walked Major General Marcus Thorne. I hadn't seen him in person in 3 years. He looked exactly the same. Straight spine, controlled expression, the kind of presence that doesn't need volume. The room froze. This wasn't hotel security. This wasn't a publicity stunt. This was federal authority walking into a private gala. Cynthia's hand trembled slightly, but she forced a smile. I think there's been a mistake, she said into the microphone lightly. We didn't invite entertainment. No one laughed. The military police spread efficiently along the perimeter. General Thorne walked directly down the center aisle, not toward the stage, toward me. Every eye followed him. He stopped 3 feet in front of me. He came to attention. And then he saluted. Clean, precise, public. Colonel Vance, he said clearly. Sir. The room inhaled collectively. I returned the salute. At ease, sir, I replied. He lowered his hand. We have completed the asset freeze and financial review, he said, voice steady enough to carry across the silent ballroom. We have verified unauthorized transfer and misuse of restricted combat compensation funds. The words echoed harder than any insult earlier. Cynthia's champagne glass slipped from her hand. It shattered on the stage floor. She didn't move. Her face drained of color. What is this? She demanded weakly. General Thorne turned slowly toward her. Cynthia Vance, he asked. She swallowed. Yes. You are under active federal investigation for unlawful execution of power of attorney, fraudulent guardianship petition, and misappropriation of federally regulated combat compensation. Murmurs erupted instantly. What does that mean? One investor whispered loudly. It means, Thorne said calmly, that funds tied to national defense compensation were diverted under questionable capacity and used for private commercial expansion. The phrase landed like a hammer. National defense, compensation, diverted. Cynthia shook her head. No, she said. It was legal. She signed. Under sedation, I said evenly. Her eyes snapped toward me. You set this up, she whispered. I documented it, I replied. General Thorne continued. All associated accounts have been frozen, he said. Event payments are suspended pending investigation. Any assets purchased through those funds are subject to seizure. Guests began stepping backward. One sponsor removed his name badge quickly. A real estate developer near the bar checked his phone, probably verifying transfer alerts. What about us? Someone called out. We invested. If your investment was routed through compromised funds, Thorne said you will be contacted. That was enough. The word compromise spreads faster than gossip. People began moving toward exits, quietly at first, then faster. Cynthia stepped down from the stage. This is harassment, she said, voice rising. She's manipulating military contacts. General Thorne didn't raise his tone. The compliance division received formal documentation, he said. Your private investigator's communications were included. Her mouth opened, closed. You're not serious, she said faintly. We are, he replied. 2 military police officers approached the stage. My parents stood abruptly. This is a misunderstanding, my father insisted. It's a family matter. It became federal when restricted compensation was involved. Thorne responded. My mother grabbed Cynthia's arm. Say something, she urged. Cynthia looked at me like I had detonated the room. You did this, she said through clenched teeth. You did this, I answered calmly. General Thorne faced me again. Colonel Vance, he said, voice firm but respectful. Your compensation package has been secured. The full amount is recoverable pending final accounting. Recoverable. The word felt solid. Thank you, sir, I replied. We regret the circumstances, he added. I understand. He glanced around the ballroom once. Half the guests were gone already. Others stood frozen, calculating exposure. The MC had stepped away from the microphone entirely. Cynthia's investors were slipping toward side exits, avoiding eye contact with her. A woman who had taken selfies with Cynthia earlier now looked like she'd never met her. The shift was immediate. Image collapsed faster than money. You can't do this publicly, Cynthia said desperately. We can, Thorne replied. And we did. Military police moved closer. Am I being arrested? She asked. You are being detained for questioning pending formal charges, he said. Her knees almost buckled. My father stepped between them briefly. She's not a criminal, he said. She executed unauthorized transfers, exceeding $3 million tied to restricted compensation, Thorne answered evenly. That qualifies. My mother looked at me. Fix this, she whispered. I held her gaze. No. Cynthia's eyes filled with something new. Not anger, fear. The same fear she tried to weaponize against me. This was for growth, she said weakly. For opportunity. It was theft, I said. She shook her head. You would have wasted it. I was protecting it. Military police placed light restraint on her wrists. Not dramatic, not rough, just procedure. The ballroom lights suddenly felt too bright. Broken glass still glittered on the stage. The banner behind her read Entrepreneur of the Year. Now it looked like evidence. As officers escorted her past me, she leaned close enough to whisper, You think you won? I didn't smile. I think documentation did, I said. General Thorne remained beside me as the room emptied. You handled this correctly, he said quietly. I followed protocol. He gave a small nod. Good officers do. Cynthia was guided toward the exit. Her heels echoed against the marble floor. The same floor she walked across believing she owned the night. Now every step sounded different. And the phrase national defense compensation still hung in the air like smoke no one could clear. I watched as the officers repositioned around Cynthia near the ballroom exit. She wasn't screaming anymore. Shock has a quiet stage. General Thorne stepped slightly aside as 2 federal agents entered through the same doors the military police had used. Dark suits, credentials visible, efficient posture. One of them addressed Cynthia directly. Ms. Vance, you are being placed under arrest on suspicion of federal fraud, unlawful guardianship petition, financial exploitation, under restricted defense compensation statutes, and interference with federally regulated military assets. The charges were read clearly, no emotion, just law. My father stepped forward again, but this time his voice cracked. This is insane, he said. She didn't steal. It was authorized. Authorization obtained under impaired capacity is subject to revocation, the agent replied calmly. Evidence indicates premeditated intent. Evidence. The word felt earned. The second agent opened a slim folder. Issuance of notarized will amendment using forged signature pattern. Recorded payment to private investigator for competency fabrication. Rapid liquidation of compensation funds within 48 hours. Each line landed like a hammer. Cynthia's hands trembled as restraints were secured properly this time. You're destroying me, she said, staring at me. No, I replied. You did that. My mother moved suddenly and dropped to her knees in front of me. Please, she said, tell them to stop. She's your sister. The ballroom was nearly empty now. Only hotel staff, a few stunned guests, and uniformed personnel remained. My father followed her down. "Elena," he said hoarsely. "We were trying to protect the family." I looked at both of them. "You weren't protecting the family," I said evenly. "You were protecting an investment." My mother shook her head. "She was building something." With my combat compensation, I replied. "It was for all of us," my father insisted weakly. I held his gaze. "I risked my life for people I didn't know," I said calmly. "But my own family tried to erase me for a payout." Silence settled heavily. Cynthia looked smaller now. The gold gown didn't shine the same way. "You could have shared it," she muttered. "I earned it," I said. One of the agents gestured toward the exit. "Transport is ready," he said. Cynthia hesitated for a fraction of a second before walking. No one followed her. No investors, no sponsors, no friends. Just law enforcement and the echo of shattered glass still on stage. General Thorne turned toward me. "Full recovery is underway," he said. "Preliminary asset seizure has stabilized the majority of funds." "How much?" I asked. 2.9 million recovered immediately," he replied. "Remaining amounts tied up in contractual holds but traceable." Traceable. That was enough. "Will the guardianship petition stand?" I asked. "No," he said firmly. "It collapses under fraud." My parents were still kneeling. "Come home," my mother whispered. "I am home," I said quietly. "Just not here." Within weeks, the financial review concluded. $3.2 million were fully restored to my control after asset liquidation and seizure orders finalized. The suburban house was reverted to its original inheritance structure, pending probate correction. The private investigator submitted a sworn statement confirming manipulation and payment intent. Cynthia's consulting firm dissolved before formal sentencing. Federal charges moved forward. I didn't attend the court hearing. I had already heard enough. Instead, I met with a financial advisor recommended through Veteran Services. We sat in a small office with no chandeliers, no banners, no champagne, just paperwork and options. "What do you want to do with it?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "I want it structured," I said. "Transparent, purpose-driven." We established a foundation, half allocated to programs supporting children of fallen service members, half to long-term rehabilitation services for injured veterans navigating civilian transition. Legally binding, audited annually, no room for private manipulation. I signed those documents wide awake. No sedation, no coercion, just clarity. The suburban house was sold properly. My share transferred into the foundation. I didn't keep it. Some people expected me to buy a new house, upgrade my life, celebrate. But celebration wasn't the point. Control was. General Thorne met me one final time, outside the same Grand Regent Hotel, weeks after the gala. No event banners now, just a quiet entrance and passing traffic. "You handled this professionally," he said. "I followed procedure," I replied. "That's rare under personal pressure. I've had worse pressure." He gave a brief nod. "You'll be contacted if further testimony is required," he added. "I'll cooperate." We shook hands. No salute this time, just acknowledgement. When I turned to leave, I didn't look back at the hotel. I didn't look back at my parents' house either when I packed the last of my belongings from the basement. They didn't try to stop me. The silence between us had become permanent. Not dramatic, not explosive, just finished. On my final night in that house, my mother stood in the hallway. "You didn't have to destroy everything," she said quietly. "I didn't," I replied. "I corrected it." My father said nothing. Cynthia's room upstairs was empty by then. No glam studio, no banners, just stripped walls and unpaid invoices. I carried my duffel bag out without ceremony. $3.2 million had passed through greed exposure investigation and recovery. But something else had become clear in the process. Money can amplify character. It doesn't create it. I didn't lose family at that gala. I saw who they were when opportunity arrived. As I drove away for the last time, I didn't feel triumph. I felt alignment. The compensation meant to honor service now funded service again. And that mattered more than any ballroom applause ever could. Money can buy luxury. It can rent status. It can decorate a stage. But it cannot steal a soldier's honor. Now I want to ask you something. If the people closest to you tried to control your life for financial gain, would you fight publicly like I did? Or would you walk away quietly and cut them off forever? Tell me what you would choose, and if stories about strength and justice matter to you, Make sure you're subscribed because some battles don't happen overseas. I didn't lose my money because I was weak. I lost temporary control because I assumed blood meant safety. That was my mistake. When everything collapsed and the investigation stabilized, I spent a long time thinking about one uncomfortable truth. The most dangerous document I signed wasn't classified, wasn't overseas, and wasn't under enemy fire. It was signed on my parents' couch. Family feels safe. That's why financial boundaries disappear inside it. Nobody thinks they need legal defense from their own sister. Nobody thinks they need transaction alerts for their own parents. But money doesn't recognize family titles. It recognizes access, and access is power. Looking back, Cynthia didn't start by asking for money. She started by questioning my stability. That's how control works. First you reduce credibility, then you request oversight. Then you justify intervention. It sounded caring, it wasn't. Here's the first lesson I learned the hard way. Never sign anything when you are physically or emotionally compromised. I don't care if it's your spouse, your parent, or your pastor handing you the document. If you are medicated, exhausted, grieving, or overwhelmed, you are not in a position to consent to legal authority transfers. Power of attorney is not a casual favor. It is full operational control over your life. It allows someone to move your money, speak to your doctors, access your accounts, make decisions in your name. And once it's activated, reversing it becomes a process. If someone says it's just temporary, that should make you more cautious, not less. Temporary control is still control. Second lesson. Love and financial access are not the same thing. You can love someone deeply and still refuse to give them account authority. You can appreciate your parents and still keep your passwords private. You can trust someone emotionally and still require legal review before signing documents. If someone reacts angrily when you set a boundary that tells you everything, healthy people respect structure. Manipulative people resist it. When Cynthia realized I wasn't confronting her emotionally, she escalated legally. That's another pattern worth recognizing. If someone keeps mentioning your mental stability in public settings, pay attention. If they repeatedly suggest you need supervision, documentation may already be in progress. If they talk about what's best for you while positioning themselves as decision makers, they are building narrative leverage. Concern can be weaponized. Let me make this practical. If you are the highest earner in your family, or if you receive insurance settlements, military compensation, lawsuit payouts, business liquidity events, you are statistically more likely to be pressured by someone close to you. Not because they hate you, but because proximity plus opportunity equals temptation. Here's what I would tell anyone in that position. 1. Use layered financial protection. Transaction alerts for every transfer above a set amount. Two-factor authentication on everything. Independent legal counsel not connected to family. 2. Never allow someone to hold on to your documents. If you sign something, you keep a copy immediately. If they say we'll process it later, you say no. 3. Separate medical authority from financial authority. They are not the same thing. They should never be bundled casually. 4. Audit your own vulnerability. Are you exhausted? Are you recovering? Are you emotionally raw? Those are the moments people exploit. The hardest realization for me wasn't that Cynthia wanted the money. It was that my parents supported the idea because they believed she could grow it. They weren't thinking about legality. They were thinking about momentum. And momentum blinds people. Money amplifies character. It doesn't create it. If someone needs you to appear weak so they can appear strong, that's not protection. That's positioning. If someone says, we're just trying to help, but every step increases their control and decreases yours, that's not help. That's strategy. You are not selfish for protecting what you earned. You are not paranoid for documenting what you suspect. And you are not cruel for enforcing boundaries. There's another truth people don't like to admit. Family can become a financial risk. Not because they're evil, but because familiarity lowers defense. You don't run background checks on your sister. You don't assume your mother would kneel in a ballroom asking you to reverse a fraud investigation. Until it happens. The day I realized my signature had been used to empty my account, I had two choices: explode emotionally or respond structurally. Emotion would have given them proof of instability. Structure gave me recovery. If someone in your life benefits from you looking unstable, the most powerful thing you can do is stay calm. Documentation defeats narrative. Process defeats panic, and boundaries defeat manipulation. Let me leave you with this: the moment someone needs you weakened in order to gain authority over your life, they are not acting in love. They are acting in leverage. And leverage has no loyalty. Protect your access, protect your name, protect your clarity, because once money enters the room, character is exposed. And not everyone survives that exposure. When I found out the money was gone, I didn't confront Cynthia. That wasn't restraint. That was strategy. Most people think strength means reacting immediately, raising your voice, calling out betrayal in real time, making sure everyone knows you're right. That's not strength. That's relief. Relief feels powerful for about 10 minutes. Then the other side adapts. If I had exploded the day I saw the account balance, Cynthia would have used it as proof. See, she's unstable, emotional, unpredictable. That's what she was building toward. When someone is constructing a narrative about your instability, your reaction becomes their evidence. So I did the opposite of what she expected. I got quiet, not passive, strategic. There's a difference. Here's the first lesson I learned about fighting back without losing yourself. Emotion is data, not instruction. Anger told me something was wrong. It didn't tell me what to do next. Instead of arguing, I documented. Screenshots, transaction logs, timestamp comparisons, audio recordings that were legal in my state, copies of notarized documents. Every time I felt the urge to confront, I redirected it into structure. Structure beats shouting every time. If you are ever in a situation where someone is trying to discredit you, understand this: the louder you become, the more usable you are. Calm people are hard to attack. Chaotic people are easy to frame. Second lesson: never fight a reputation war emotionally. Cynthia wasn't just taking money. She was planting ideas. She's adjusting. She's not stable. She doesn't understand civilian systems. Those weren't random comments. They were groundwork. If someone keeps mentioning your mental state in front of others, that's not concern. That's positioning. If they talk about supervision, oversight, or management without you requesting it, they are preparing justification. You don't fight that by defending yourself publicly. You fight that by staying visibly composed. Every time she pushed, I lowered my tone. Every time she tried to provoke, I shortened my responses. You don't have to prove stability. You demonstrate it through behavior. Third lesson: documentation is power, not screenshots shared on social media, not group texts exposing someone. Formal documentation, timeline reconstruction, independent review, escalation through official channels. When you escalate properly, you remove the argument from the room. I didn't win because I had military contacts. I won because I followed procedure. If someone wrongs you financially or legally, skip the drama and go straight to structure. Bank fraud department, legal counsel, compliance divisions, paper trails, don't argue back. Here's something most people don't understand. If someone is manipulating you, they are counting on emotional reaction. They need you to lose control. Say something reckless. Appear unstable. Overreact publicly. Once you do, they stop being the aggressor. You become the problem. I refused to give Cynthia that shift. When she slapped me at home, I didn't retaliate. When she mocked me publicly at the gala, I didn't argue. When my parents disowned me in front of donors, I didn't beg. That wasn't weakness. It was discipline. You don't wrestle in the mud when you already have the paperwork. Another critical lesson: delay gratification. Confrontation feels satisfying. Resolution feels permanent. If you can tolerate the discomfort of silence long enough to gather evidence, you increase your leverage exponentially. People who operate on manipulation often move fast. They assume you will respond fast. When you don't, they overextend. Cynthia overextended. She filed too much paperwork, moved too much money too quickly, spoke too freely. That happens when someone believes they've already won. Let them believe that. Winning emotionally is short-term. Winning structurally is irreversible. There's also something personal here. When someone betrays you, the instinct is to match energy. If they insult you, you insult back. If they lie, you expose immediately. But when you match energy, you lower yourself into their framework. Instead, raise the standard. If someone calls you unstable, show up calm. If someone calls you selfish, show your documentation. If someone tries to isolate you, widen your support network. Never let someone drag you into a performance of chaos, because chaos is where manipulators operate best. Here's a practical framework you can apply. Step 1: pause. Not forever, just long enough to avoid reaction. Step 2, record everything: dates, statements, transactions. Step 3, separate. Limit emotional access to the person manipulating you. Step 4, escalate properly. Use institutions, not arguments. Step 5, stay publicly composed. Your image is not defended through words. It's defended through consistency. Let me be clear about something else. Fighting back does not mean revenge. It means correction. Revenge is emotional satisfaction. Correction is structural justice. If you chase revenge, you will become reactive. If you pursue correction, you remain centered. And there's one more hard truth. Sometimes you will lose people in the process. When you enforce boundaries, people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will feel attacked. That doesn't mean you're wrong. It means they were comfortable. Comfort does not equal fairness. If protecting yourself makes someone angry, examine why they needed you unprotected. In the end, I didn't raise my voice. I raised standards. I didn't win because I humiliated her publicly. I won because I never humiliated myself. If someone in your life is trying to control your narrative, remember this. You don't defeat manipulation by reacting louder. You defeat it by becoming undeniable. Stay calm, build quietly, document thoroughly, escalate properly, and never let someone rewrite your stability just because they need access to your life. After everything settled, people kept asking me the same question. What did it feel like to get the money back? That question always sounded small to me because the money was never the point. The exposure was $3.2 million moved through my life like a stress test. Not a blessing, not a curse, a test. Money doesn't create character, it reveals it. Cynthia didn't become greedy the day the deposit hit. The greed was already there. The money just removed friction. My parents didn't suddenly value her more. They always admired momentum. The money just amplified it. And I didn't suddenly become strong when I fought back. The discipline was already there. Pressure just clarified it. If you woke up tomorrow with more money than you ever expected, who would you become? That's not a motivational question. It's a diagnostic one. Would you become generous, protective, strategic, or entitled? Would you become louder or more careful? Wealth doesn't change your nature. It scales it. That's why I didn't celebrate when the funds were restored. I didn't buy a new car. I didn't post anything online. I didn't hold a private victory dinner. Because celebration would have made it about me. And this was never about ego. It was about alignment. Here's something I learned that most people never think about. Justice feels quiet. Revenge feels loud. When Cynthia was arrested, there was no dramatic satisfaction, no applause, no cinematic closure, just paperwork, just procedure, just consequence. Professional justice doesn't yell, it documents. It doesn't humiliate, it corrects. If you ever find yourself wronged, remember that difference. If you chase humiliation, you lower yourself. If you pursue correction, you preserve yourself. That's why I redirected the money. Not impulsively, not emotionally, structurally. I sat with financial advisors, veteran advocates, and legal counsel. I reviewed options. I considered long-term sustainability. Half went to programs supporting children of fallen service members. The other half went to rehabilitation and reintegration services for injured veterans. Not because it sounded noble, because it made sense. Money earned through sacrifice should serve purpose. If you ever come into sudden money through inheritance, settlement, business success, pause. Don't spend immediately. Don't redistribute out of guilt. Don't try to prove generosity. Structure it first. Create barriers around it. Audit your intentions, because sudden money attracts sudden expectations. And expectations are pressure. I also learned something else that's harder to admit. You can forgive emotionally without restoring access. Forgiveness does not require vulnerability. You can wish someone healing and still deny them your account numbers. You can release anger and still maintain distance. People confuse reconciliation with maturity. They are not the same. Reconciliation requires trust. Trust requires change. Change requires accountability, not apology, not tears, accountability. Some viewers ask whether I regret letting my family collapse under investigation. I didn't collapse them. Truth did. If your integrity can't survive transparency, that's not my responsibility. Another truth, if your family fractures when money arrives, The crack was already there. Money just applied pressure. In my case, pressure exposed preference. They preferred image over integrity, momentum over morality, appearance over accountability. And once I saw that clearly, there was nothing left to argue about. You can't negotiate values with people who don't share them. That doesn't make them monsters. It makes them incompatible. Honor is not emotional. It's behavioral consistency under stress. When you are insulted publicly, do you remain composed? When you are betrayed privately, do you stay strategic? When you regain power, do you use it carefully? That's honor. Not speeches, not uniforms, not titles, consistency. Here's the advice I would give anyone watching who feels trapped between family loyalty and self-protection. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to require transparency. You are allowed to refuse access, and you are allowed to walk away without drama. Walking away quietly is not weakness, it is boundary enforcement. You don't owe anyone your vulnerability simply because you share DNA. And you don't owe anyone financial access simply because they supported you once. Support is not a down payment on control. The biggest shift for me wasn't recovering the funds. It was realizing I no longer needed approval from the people who tried to diminish me. When that need disappears, manipulation loses oxygen. Money can buy luxury, it can fund events, it can rent applause, it can create temporary influence, but it cannot manufacture respect, and it cannot steal honor. Honor is earned privately and demonstrated publicly. It survives audits, it survives exposure, it survives betrayal. If you ever find yourself choosing between keeping peace and keeping integrity, choose integrity. Peace built on silence doesn't last. Integrity built on discipline does. So I'll leave you with this: if tomorrow someone offered you wealth at the cost of your values, what would you trade? And if someone tried to rewrite your character for access to your life, would you fight emotionally? Or would you stand steady and let structure speak for you? Think about that. Because money will test you, but character decides whether you pass.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction, but the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.